morning, good morning, good morning. Here we are. Today is Sunday, June 1st, 2025. It's about 6 o'clock in the morning. My name is Edward Bevilacqua, and I'm trying to get something going here, like light. There we go. So here we are, Department of Career Services, where our goal is to help you experience this life. All right, and let's see. So it's about 6 o'clock on June 1st. And let's see, we are again going to talk about Hearth and Spirit Network 2.0. So a little bit tired. Yeah, I think I'm a little bit tired. But what else we got? So let's get started. So on our worksheet, that's where all the magic happens. That's where the experts are. On our worksheet, first of all, we have advice from an 80-year-old. Have a firm handshake. Leave an impression, a good positive impression. TED Talk for today, Blaine Elker's Waiteba. What you think about, you bring about. That is a red letter one. So we are finishing week 2. This is day 7, week 2, in our neuroscience-oriented approach to success. Available on Amazon. So the end of a week inside my skull-sized kingdom. And today, once again, Blaine Elkers is talking about the reticular activating system and how Waiteba can be used to prime the RAS. So Waiteba stands for what you think about, you bring about. Programming the RAS. What you think about, you bring about. What you think about, you bring about. So he uses an analogy of gardening, or let's say gardening. And he says, what you plant is what you're going to grow. If you plant carrots, you're not going to get tomatoes. You're going to hopefully get carrots. Now, if you plant nothing, you'll probably get weeds. Because it's just the way it works. And if it's rich soil, there's stuff in there. There's seeds in there. Also, weeds are very good at catching the wind and blowing onto fertile soil. And then life is created. Well, plant life is created. So Blaine Elkers, what you think about, you bring about. Seth Godin, scripts and casting. Kind of a long, interesting one. Maybe we'll talk about that. Maybe we won't. On other interesting news, so today I'm going to the Orthodox Church, one of the Orthodox churches in Las Vegas. This is the one on Annie Oakley. I think it's St. Paul. And that should be interesting for several reasons. 1, never been to an Orthodox church. 2, it's all standing. There's no sitting. It's all standing. And it's like 2 hours. So yeah, so there'll be high reverence there. So it should be very interesting, very interesting. I get to bless myself a different way, not this way, this way. So that should be really good, fun, interesting, etc. Working on my paper. So last night I had the good fortune of having lunch with Mark Lane, who has done a lot of work in ritual type stuff. I forgot what he called it. Where you're actually classes where you're actually doing things. Body work, I think he called it. And so Heart and Spirit Network is small groups focused on the corporal works of mercy. But more than that, it's to help each person find Jesus. And then to find a church. So it's really designed to get people back to church. Get people back to church. Why? Because it's important. I was reminded last night that Jesus said, love one another in many places. I like John 15:12 and 13, but I think it's in John 13. It's certainly in Matthew 22. So love one another. Well, if you isolate, if we're not around people, how do we do that? So one thing about going to church is you get to love one another. Also, it's hard to create disciples if you don't go out, you just spend time alone or with your family. So Heart and Spirit Network, small groups. The project they have is Corporal Works of Mercy, so it could be one or more of food, water, clothing, housing, sickness, helping people who are medically or mentally need help, and visiting people in prison. So a small group can do one or more of those things. But it's really to create, as Mark says, sacred space. And the key to a small group are the rituals, but the rituals have to be from the heart. They can't be like, okay, now we do this. Okay, now we do that. It has to be very heartfelt. So it's getting the connection between the people. How do you do that? So I asked him about that. Well, when you were doing this kind of stuff, how did they do it? And one theme was everybody sits in a circle. Everybody sits in a circle. And people might hold hands, they might sing, there's a whole bunch of things they might do. Introduce one another, talk. Or just let the circle go. Let's see what happens. Fellowship is another part of it, or I'll just call that dinner. I think it was Jesus' table ministry, I think is what some people call it. Is sitting around having dinner together. And the third thing is planning the corporal works of mercy. But the glue that holds it together is the connection between the people. If the connections are not there, people won't show up. It's got to be a real experience. And I could see sitting around in chairs or on the ground would be beneficial to sitting at a table, because now we have the table between us. If we don't have the table for sitting in chairs like they do at AA, we're not behind anything, we're communicating. So, and then the other thing I got was good groups grow. And I'm not talking about numbers of people, but that happens too. But good groups grow in that they, you start doing this and then it becomes more fulfilled. So imagine looking forward to, kind of like as a hobby, looking forward to going to group to hang out with some people that are kind of cool, that have an interest in what we want to do is improve the lives of people less fortunate. We want to go out to the margins where there is no us and them, because that's the only way the margins will disappear. And remembering that we don't go to change the people at the margins, we go so the people at the margins change us. So there could be a reading like that, that's like, okay, here's our opening prayer, Father Boyle's thing. Ooh, hoo, hoo-ha. And then imaginative prayer, which should really get to the heart of it. And then a meal. And during the meal, we talk about the event. So the original version incorporated something called Yale, the Yale ruler thing, which is a self-improvement thing. And what I got clearly from Mark last night, it's not about this, it's about this. The group will not stay together, will not grow if it is not nourished spiritually. And the group has to have the feeling of it's sacred. We're doing something sacred here. We're doing something spiritual, like he talked about. Sweat lodges are very sacred type things. It's not just like going in a really hot tent like a steam bath or sauna. There's more to it than that. Well, it's not that. It's a different thing. So, heart and spirit network, small groups designed for the purpose of getting people who are spiritual but not religious to come together and interact in a sacred way that is not going to church. And the problem with church is what? Mind wandering. That's the problem with church. Mind wandering. We're not paying attention to what's going on. So the idea of the small group is we're paying attention because it's a small group, but we're also paying attention because it's more than an intellectual exercise. It is a sacred spiritual thing. And for our purpose, it's helping find Jesus, helping our people find Jesus, and using things like the Shroud of Turin as the means to do that. I mean, that's the evidence. I can tell my lack of sleep is my RAS has been programmed about sleep and the impact of not getting enough sleep. So, okay, well, here we are. We're about 14 minutes in. What I ask you to think about is, how would you feel about joining a small group on either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday night, hour and a half. So it should take you not more than 2 hours from the time you leave your house to the time you come back. Hour and a half where it is a sacred space with a practical purpose that makes us feel good, because we're going out to the margins, so the margins disappear, and then there's no us and them. There's only us within a circle of compassion. Okay, so that's a thing to ponder. How would you feel about being in a group like that? And how could it move you? How to help create, because everybody's going to, how do you help create a moving thing? Okay, so with that, we're going to say and cut. Busy day. Got to be on the road in 1 hour to go to the Orthodox Church. Church that has changed very little in about 1700 years from when Constantine um, institutionalized the Christian movement. Say it that way. Okay, and with that, we're going to say and cut.